From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Folklore. I'm your host, James Hernishin. The big news on the education front in Polk County is the end of non-partisan elections for the school board. In a move that almost no one in the county thought was an even marginally bright idea, the state legislature voted this summer to make elections for seats on the Board of Education partisan races. A decade ago, only 15 of the state's school districts had partisan elections, but the Republican Party that took over the State House and Senate in 2010 isn't keen on independent school boards. By 2018, that number had more than doubled to 35, and beginning next year, it will be about 50, including Polk. The problem with partisan races is that in North Carolina, anyone who wants to run for the school board next year, as an independent, will have to get about 640 signatures from registered voters in the county by next July just to get on the ballot. How you do that in a decentralized rural county like ours without spending an awful lot of time and money is beyond me. I suspect that means that current members of the board who aren't registered Republicans or Democrats, and anyone else interested in running but who is still unaffiliated, will probably want to think about choosing one of the parties. They have to do that before September 23rd of this year. And given recent voting history in these parts, it probably doesn't make too much sense to choose the party with the donkey mascot. Why is this a big deal? Because, as any survey of the politics of education will quickly show you, school districts with partisan boards of education are less effective and less successful than their non-partisan counterparts. There's a good reason why an attempt 2 years ago to hold a referendum on transforming Polk's Board of Education to a partisan panel was soundly rejected. No one here wants to see even more culture wars in our schools, thank you very much. Polk County consistently ranks near the top of the state's school districts, and we all want to keep it that way. Next year, though, a partisan school board election is what we'll have. So, I thought it would be a good time to check in once again with Polk School Superintendent Greene, who is one of the first guests on this show, to establish a baseline against which future change can be gauged. He's not in a position to speak about the merits, or lack thereof, of introducing party politics to our schools, but he can talk about things like the extra short summer break our students just had, the situation with bus drivers and bus routes, and what his staff is going to do with all the bonus tax revenue that county commissioners approved for the schools in this year's budget. We talked in his office in Columbus at the end of the first week of class. Greene, welcome to Folklore.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yes, I'm very glad you're back. You are the first repeat guest.
Oh, thank you.
And hopefully we can do this every year. So let's get right to it. It's really interesting. This is the end of the first week of school, but it's only the middle of August. So let's talk about why are the kids back so early?
I think that, at least in our county, for many, many years, we've had a discussion about how nice it would be to have a calendar that reflects the needs of our students rather than, perhaps other folks. And to get kids done with exams by Christmas time, to be able to start our transition into the second semester when we return in January, makes so much sense. It aligns our calendar with the community college, and we have the largest number of students taking Career and College Promise classes, which is dual enrollment credit for students. Our early college now matches up with our regular calendar. It just made too much sense for students at some point not to try to do this.
Well, I think we all agree it makes more sense, but it would have made sense a long, long time ago. The law has not yet changed, and there have been several attempts to introduce legislation, but it hasn't gotten through committee. So technically, Polk County's in breach of the law.
I'm not a lawyer, but what I will tell you is that certainly our Board of Education felt strongly enough in this particular year to move forward with a calendar that better suited our students' needs. I'm not going to speculate as to whether, to what extent they may or may not know all the intricacies of the law or the sanctions that are associated with it. But certainly we came up with a calendar according to our Board of Education that is for students.
Well, again, I haven't heard a single person complain about it. When back to school week starts up and Facebook's full of pictures of kids getting dressed to go to school, nobody was saying, this is a bad idea.
I'll have to say, and certainly, again, I'm speculating, but of all the decisions we've made over the past 5 or 10 years, I'll have to say this is by far one of the more universally accepted decisions we've made. Right. Every comment I've received and our board received have all been positive, all the comments.
What about from the State Board of Education or the legislature?
Well, certainly in those situations, anytime that a district is not in compliance with a rule or a policy or a law, we're notified of that and certainly encouraged to rectify those things when we can. I'm not sure from a legal standpoint, I'm sure there's some ins and outs. Union County obviously had somebody complain when they had a similar calendar, which caused an injunction. They had to revert back to their original. My assumption is if we had a lot of pushback here locally and somebody wanted to go that route, we'd probably have to do the same thing. But I'm not aware of any citizen who's willing to do that. The legislature has had mixed emotions, I think. There have been many bills introduced on the House side, especially what we call our one-fers or our one-offs that have to do with just one county getting flexibility. But whenever those bills, whether they're singletons or whether they're for the whole state, get over to the Senate, they're parked in committee. And so I think boards of education across the state now, you've got 16 districts who've started school already. And I think it's we're trying to do the right thing for our kids. And if we're not willing to do that at the legislative level, then we're going to do it at the local level.
And the bottom line is there's no consequences unless somebody takes it through the courts.
My understanding is that bill, I don't have to say it. Tim Moore said it. He said that there are no sanctions in that bill and that he feels like probably the legislature ought to get back together and just change the law.
Well, it would be nice not to be sending the message to our kids that we can just ignore the law whenever we feel like it.
I think if there's any heartburn associated, and again, I can't speak for our board members, and they're the ones who made that decision, but certainly if there's any heartburn, that's it.
Right. Well, it's good to know that everybody's really on board with it, at least in Polk County.
Here locally, for sure.
Okay. Let's get to another kind of good news, and that a couple months ago, the Polk County commissioners raised everybody's taxes by a couple of percent. But all of the money is going to Polk Schools. Like, how much money do you know?
What those 2 pennies on the property tax will do for us is approximately $750,000. And so we probably are going to see shortfalls in the $1 million range because of inflation, because of wages, because of benefits, all those things that come into play as you move into a new budget year. I tell people all the time, we have a budget that is 88 to 90% personnel costs. And so when any of those costs change, we need funding to make sure we keep those staffing positions. And Polk County has kind of hung its hat on small class sizes and the fact that our teachers have great relationships with our students. So I don't think that's lost on our commissioners, and it's certainly not lost on the people who have their kids in our schools. So I feel like they were very supportive of our endeavor here, our operations here, to make sure that we had the funding to keep our staffing in place and to make sure that those strong relationships still exist.
So $750,000, a lot of that is going to just keeping staff?
So over $300,000 of that deals with the minimum wage increase. As you know, we went from most people making $12 an hour in some of those custodial and food service positions. They're now up to $15. We increased our driver pay to $20 an hour because we could not find drivers. There are folks driving dump trucks out there and things like that making $25 and $30 an hour. A Walmart truck driver can make $110,000 or $120,000 a year. So we had to do something to stay competitive there. So between those wages and then what we see on the salary and benefits increases with our licensed personnel, there's another $200,000, $300,000 that we're going to have to compensate for. So there's $600,000 of that $750,000 done right there.
Is there anything else? I mean, equipment, classroom, like infrastructure. I mean, we just spent a lot of money on air conditioning, right?
Yes, sir.
Will the students notice anything different?
Probably not, because they're going to notice, hey, that's my same teacher. These are my same small classes. So what they'll know is that there's a preservation of what our current culture and environment is in Polk County schools. The money was dedicated on the operations side, not the capital side.
Okay.
And so we're still going to have some, what I would call significant challenges in terms of our capital expenses going forward. Certainly our Board of Commissioners and Education they're both aware of that. And we'll have a 5 and 10 year facilities long range study we'll submit. But for now, we had to cinch up our operations side to make sure that our students would continue to receive the services they've been receiving.
Well, let's just talk more about staffing then, because sure. I was reading a piece just a couple of days ago, a national survey, something like 55% of teachers in elementary and secondary schools are plotting a path out of teaching because, well, it's just not paying. It's really stressful. You've got politics thrown into the mix. So what are you doing other than giving them as much money as you possibly can, we are still one of the lower paying states when it comes to starting salaries. I think it's something like 36th. 37. So, that's not great. And I know there's only so much an individual school district can do, but what's your approach to try to dissuade teachers who are getting close to that point where they want to throw in the towel, convincing them to stick around?
I think that we try to create a work environment, especially, that is very supportive, that buffers them, if you will, from the outside. If you talk to any of our staff members at our school, I hope what they would tell you is that the Board of Education and our central office does a great job of keeping some of those political conversations and some of that milieu out of the school. And that certainly helps them, conduct their business. If they're teaching the standards and they're using materials that align with those standards to do so, then we're going to have their back. And we're going to make sure that, they continue to have the academic freedom and the autonomy they need to construct great lessons, to engage kids, and to give those individual students what they need. What we hear over and over again is that our small class sizes and the autonomy that we afford teachers are the reason they stay with us. We have teachers that drive from Haywood County, Transylvania County, Cleveland County that will come this far to work in our school system. I think because of those types of conditions. Now, the pay's not going to keep them, and we certainly offer a local supplement that is not great. It is somewhat competitive for small rural districts, but it's not Buncombe County, it's not Henderson, it's not even Rutherford. So from a pay perspective, there's only so much we can do. But we can control some of the other conditions that I think teachers find favorable and staff find favorable. And that's why I think Niche, which is this public relations type of marketing website out there, ranks us the best place in education to work in the state, number one. And I think that's because our people feel that they're supported. They feel like they have a job that's manageable and that they can make a difference in the lives of kids.
Well, I know at least two teachers, one of whom has been on this podcast, who left the school in the last few years and then came back. And that tells me a heck of a lot. If you're going to get fed up and walk out the door and take another job, but then a year or two later say, it wasn't so bad compared to what the alternatives are.
Right.
So I guess you guys are doing something right.
Well, I think our turnover for years before COVID and before we saw some of the issues with the employee market taking over again, we had less than 10% turnover in any category you want to say. Now that's pretty low compared to other school systems, and certainly we've seen that grow over time. But we're still not seeing the type of gaps and vacancies that other places are. For the first year ever, we did start the year missing probably 3 positions from a license perspective. But I don't know that that's really a true reflection. One of those was a resignation because their spouse was assigned to a different job at a different place. Another one was a family issue. They had to go and take care of a sick parent. But the third one was, I'm getting out of here. I've got a better paying job and I'm done. And I feel like that's going to continue to happen. Teaching's a calling, James. It is. And I think people who do the job know that they're not going to get rich and that their rewards are in, again, those experiences that they get to have with students. So we've just got to make sure we nurture them and give them the autonomy and the support they need while they're here.
So you've got only 3 vacancies?
Right now we're down to 1. I think
Just
we're down to 1.
Well, that's not bad.
Compared to other places, we're awfully fortunate.
The other staffing issue, which I think was on a lot of people's minds thanks to your phone calls last year, was buses.
Yes, sir.
How are we looking for bus drivers this year?
Believe it or not, we started the year with every route being covered. And to my knowledge, we have not had to park a bus or anything yet. And so oftentimes what districts do and what we did were to couple jobs together to make it worth people's while maybe to drive a bus route. And so making sure the $20 an hour certainly helped, and making sure those veteran drivers, are making more than that because you don't want to be making the same thing as somebody coming through the door. But also allowing people who might not normally have been approved for overtime, for example. Hey, I have my day job. We'll go ahead and pay you the overtime rate so that you can do this bus driving. So we're trying to be creative. We've got a new transportation director, Jackie Crump. He's doing a tremendous job for us. And thankfully, we've had enough people bite on those jobs that we're able to fill those positions. We're lucky.
I'm curious about the effect of last year's, it seemed like almost weekly route cancellations. How did the schools accommodate the fact that a lot of kids weren't getting to class on time.
I think it put a lot of strain on both our school counselors, our principals, and our social workers to make sure that we were reaching out to families. If this is a burden for you, because we notice the attendance rates and it's going to be impacted sometimes. But I think we were flexible enough with, hey, don't care when you can get them here. And we'll try to do that. Our summer school and after school, sometimes helped out with those situations, because if a bus wasn't going to run, we could keep the kids in after school until the parent could come get them. So as much as we could, we mitigated those things. But certainly that impact continues to worry us, and we're still making up for those gaps.
Okay, well, that's all kind of numbers and budgets and operational challenges. I'd like to compare, in your mind, how things are now from a political context, because when we talked last time, we were coming out of a couple of years of, it was really rough. And, I started going to Board of Education meetings regularly not because it was entertaining, but because it was really kind of frightening to see what people were raising, and watching the 7 members of the school board take it on the chin a lot of the time, and everyone behaved in a different way. What's your feeling about the environment now?
I think you can look across the state and the nation and see that's still out there. Name your group, right? There's plenty of these groups that are going around and still challenging schools and teachers and making it a bit difficult at times. But I think here locally, what I have seen is that whether it be our Board of Education or our principals and our staff here, we've really tried to engage everybody we can in conversations about, let's quit shouting and screaming. And what are your real concerns? Let's address your real concerns. And if you're coming to us because you're concerned about your child's well-being, or because you want to, work with us on what you want your child to see, access, not access, that's fine. Let's have those conversations. But let's please take the political side and push it out. If we're talking about what's best for kids, we'll talk to you all day long. We don't want to get into those political discussions. And I'm afraid that that's maybe what happened. Some of these arguments that might have been legitimate on the front end. Hey, I don't want you telling me how to have health services for my child. I don't want you getting involved in that conversation. Well, that's fine. Let's have that discussion. Versus, well, let's just pile all this stuff on and say it's because you're this party or that party, and that's why we're doing it. So if we can get away and continue to stay away from it being purely political, I think we can solve some of the issues we have on those different sides of the aisle.
I mean, just in terms of the number of calls you get in that vein,
right.
I mean, has things, my sense is people have kind of moved on a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, when it comes to extreme politics, attention spans usually pretty short because there's always something else. So do you think the community has moved on a little bit from worrying about political indoctrination in the schools, which is part of the problem people are afraid of?
Sure.
Have they moved on?
That's a great question. I think I would answer your question with a question, and that is, what do you see at our board meetings? I certainly am not getting the level of calls that I did prior, but then again, my comment back to you is it's not election season either, and I fully anticipate those ramping up. I do feel like we've tried to engage in, again, dialogue and discussion. There have been some things that have taken place where we've tried to work hard to compromise with people. If you don't want this, tell us. We'll set up this system for you, this process for you. But no, it's quieted down, and I think that's been a great thing for our schools and our Board of Education. But, like anybody in an abusive relationship, you're always looking over your shoulder, right? I do think it was a vocal minority, James, and I don't say that because I know. I say it because that's my feeling about things. But the majority of working families have to send their kids to school. They've got to worry about how am I getting my bills paid? What am I doing over here? And they don't necessarily have time to continuously stay involved in this political battle and political rhetoric that's out there. So we've seen it die down, and I think we're in a better place, and I hope we stay there.
One of the things that makes Polk County a little different from some of the other districts that have been in the news in the last few months about education is we aren't battling over a pool of money with charter schools or private schools with vouchers. The new state budget, assuming it gets passed, will make it much easier for people to divert money from the public school system to private schools. Well, we don't have that here. All we've got are the public schools. Do you think that takes the pressure off a little bit? Is it nice not to have that battle?
I certainly think we've been fortunate not to have that level of competition over the years. You're starting to see some things come in. There are a couple of charter schools near enough to us to where they pull student population away. We do have a couple of private schools now. They're very small, but in Polk County that we see some enrollment go to from time to time. And your homeschool population here in Polk County is larger than people might imagine. What I have seen since COVID and really a little bit before that, we have seen people maybe taking a little bit more advantage of options here in Polk County. But we also see that bleed back into our district. For example, someone will leave and go try XYZ charter school and then come back the next year because it wasn't what they thought it was. They'll try XYZ private school and realize, oh, that's not what I thought it was, and come back to us. So I think that's what I worry about more is that, okay, now we've lost a year with that particular student, or now that momentum or that funding, is no longer there. So I personally believe that our public schools are the foundation of our society. We talk about an educated populace. Well, that kind of means we all need to have at least a similar experience to be able to do that. And when we start dicing things up, I get a little worried about it. This is the one place where everybody has to come. Everybody has to get along. Everybody has to figure out that they need to at least appreciate that people can have a differing position. And when we start getting away from that, and I think it's happened in politics. You know that, James. I mean, we all have our echo chambers we're in. And if we start going that direction with education, I don't think it's going to be good.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is what direction do you think things are going right now? I mean, are you feeling just a little bit more confident, a little less stressed, or are things still percolating away under the surface? And again, folklore exists in large part because there's not a lot of places to talk about this in public.
Right.
And so I don't have a clue about what what are the folks who were complaining a couple of years ago about COVID masks or about books they wanted banned. Are they still working away at it, or is it just not quite as top of mind as it once was?
I still think the core that was passionate about those particular issues, they're absolutely still working at it. Again, we've tried to have dialogue with those individuals to see if we can at least sit down at the same table and figure out what's a possible solution for this, or how can we appease at least some of your concerns. So that stuff's still going on, but not to the same degree and not the same level. I think our bigger concern is that this thing about school choice and options, especially in North Carolina, is not going away. And any money they take away, I'm chair of our small rural schools consortium in this state. It's the 30 smallest districts in our school. And this voucher money that they're putting in the budget to take away from the public education budget is going to hamstring your smaller school systems.
It's really a substantial amount of money.
It is. And so that's the thing I worry about, James, is that schools are not going to have the resources they need to continue to offer those experiences for kids. Well, that's going to be cyclical, right? If your public schools can't get their teachers hired, can't have good experiences for kids, then more people are going to leave them, and then here we go. Because we're funded off of average daily membership. We're funded off of kids. The other thing that really drives me crazy is that there is zero accountability for private schools. There's really not much accountability for charter schools. They can pay their teachers and staff less. They only have to have half of their teachers. Charter schools only have to have half of their teachers licensed.
Half. Why even bother with a half, I guess?
Your private schools, I think 90% of the private schools who've received voucher money do not submit any type of financial documentation. Our books are wide open for everybody to see because we're using taxpayer money. So I worry, too, about times when we have actually noticed the names that are submitted to us for us to pay the share to them, they don't even live in Polk County anymore. So that's obviously rife with fraud. And it worries me about the message we're sending families. But to answer your question, we are in a better place. And I do feel like we're recovering very well from the pandemic. We're starting to get kids back. Our enrollment's up by about 65, 70 kids this year. And we continue to have people calling us and saying, you've got a great school system. We want to move in. So for that, I'm very happy.
Let's talk about that for a bit, because Polk County, its population isn't really growing significantly.
Right.
I think it shrank a little bit in the last census. It's around 19,000. people, but your enrollment has gone up, you
yes,
say,
sir.
by several dozen. Is that a function of the demographics of the people moving to the county? A lot of younger families?
I think it's probably a little of both. I think you're starting to see now a little bit of urban flight. Back in 2007, when the recession hit, if you follow a couple years after that, we really saw people leave, and you saw them leave to go to the urban centers where the jobs were, where the things were happening. And so now I think we're seeing the reverse of that, where you've got people who are frustrated being in a large city. We're getting them from, out west, California. We're seeing them from New Hampshire, from Pennsylvania. I talked to a family from Florida. So, we're having people move from those urban areas. So I think it is a different demographic. It's not your retirees like we normally would think would be the flux. And certainly if you talk to the development people over at the county office, they'll tell you they've had more permits filed. You've had more houses being sold to families. So whether we like it or not, James, and I hope we preserve our small community, but we're in that mega region of 26 and 85, and it's going to hit us from both sides. It's going to hit us from the south coming up from Greenville, Spartanburg. It's going to hit us from Asheville coming down. And yeah, we're seeing growth.
Yeah, I see the construction going on at exit 53 at Hendersonville, and you can sort of just feel it coming closer.
That's right. That's right.
All right. The last thing I wanted to discuss was really anything on your mind that you think people aren't aware of that's going on in the schools that maybe they should. Is there? I mean, I know you've been in this job for several years now, so it's probably kind of stay the course, keep doing what we're doing. But I'm here because I want to hear anything new about the schools that I didn't know about, and that most parents probably haven't had a chance to learn about yet.
Well, I think it gives me an opportunity to talk about our strategic planning process that we want to engage in this year. And I think, James, what we have to do is to kind of turn the corner a little bit. For a lot of years, we've been great at what I call drill and kill. We can get great test scores. Our kids work very hard. Our teachers work very hard. But we need to pay more attention to the outcomes. And I think when we talk about things like workforce development, are we doing enough on the career development side? You're seeing population kind of starting to steer away from four-year universities and look more at certifications and two-year degrees and those things. And so we need to be responsive to that. And the fact that we've had kids go out and get a welding job for $100,000 a year. Well, why are they going to go get a French literature degree when they can be a welder? So you'll start to see, I think, a focus, and we're excited about that, on more skill-based instruction, less content, discrete knowledge being, memorize this, do that. Because let's face it, in today's society, it's a different economy. And so I hope that we can adjust and adapt and still, keep our performance where it was. But that's our goal, is to try to meet kids where they are. And let's make sure your future, that you have goals and that you have plans for the future.
Well, one of the things I was trying to tell my son before he started forming ideas of his own about what his career should be, I said, look, there is a big transformation happening in the world right now. We are switching from internal combustion engines to electricity. So if you get into electrical engineering, for instance, building solar arrays or wind turbines or hydroelectric dams or geothermal power, you're going to be able to work for the rest of your life.
That's right.
And I would love to see our schools do a little bit more on
Absolutely.
that. Now, let's just say I always thought Polk County schools did a pretty good job of training people to live and work in Polk County.
Yes,
that
sir.
seemed to be the focus.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're saying we're going to do even more of that?
We're going to have to, because what you just said is exactly accurate. And so whether you're going to go to a four-year university or you think you're going to do something, maybe parallel with a certification, we need to be thinking beyond just Polk County. So we've got a great construction program. We've got a great FFA, agriculture program there. We've got a great nursing program there. And certainly those are all jobs around here that you can do. But where is our electrical engineering? Where are those things in robotics that we need to add so that they can be more marketable to a broader audience out there in different parts of North Carolina and beyond? So, yes, sir, you're exactly right. Let's move from simply making sure that they check this box off for this course, and what we're teaching these kids, is it going to lead them down a path that they want to go down? Again, those skills, those attitudes, those attributes, those things that they can carry with them. And we need to have broader conversations than just, what are you going to do here in Polk County?
So what do you mean by a strategic dialogue with the community?
So we started right before COVID. We had planned on doing this. I was all happy. We're going to call it Vision 2020, and we're going to do all this, and then COVID hit. So we got like 75 business leaders together and had a luncheon and talked about, look, just tell us the skills, the characteristics of employees that you really feel like are important to you for you to be productive and you to have a viable business. And then I want to take that back to our teachers and say, these ought to be integrated into your classrooms every day. Simple things: showing up on time, making sure you're paying attention and you're engaged. Can you solve a simple problem? Can you work with other people to solve a problem? That's not in a textbook. So we have to be able to teach that to kids. And so engaging not only our business community, but our parents and families. What do you want? When we have a student graduate from Polk County Schools, what kind of skills, attributes, knowledge, what do you think they need to be successful going forward? What do you want to see us focusing on? And then certainly, James, you'll always get those comments too about where do we need to go with our facilities? What do we need to do maybe more so on school safety? And so we want to get all that information from our parents and families, from our business community leaders, and make sure that we have a good plan going forward for the next 5 or 10 years.
So what exactly are you doing to get that feedback?
So we'll do surveys coming up this year. We're going to have school-based meetings where we invite the public come and, hey, if you want to talk about this topic or that topic, we'll have roundtables where we take notes on that. Similar to what we did back during accreditation. I don't know if you remember that. We sent out surveys with SACS and Advanced Ed to get and so again, just throwing those things out there. What do you think is the most important thing we can do for your child? What kind of skills and attributes do you want us to make sure we're focusing on for them? And then we'll get together as an admin team with our school leadership. We'll have student representation on there and really find out, okay, what are the 3 or 4 things that Polk County Schools really needs to be focused on for the next 5 or 10 years to make sure our students continue to be high achieving, very competitive in the job market.
Well, I'll probably show up at one of those meetings.
We hope you will.
I've run out of questions. We've been talking for about half an hour. It doesn't seem like enough because the Polk County Schools is such an important part of this community, and it's one, and I've made this point before, it's one of the only things that everyone seems to agree on, that we've got good schools and we need to keep them good, even if some people get a bit cross from time to time about things that are really just manifestations of national political messaging and stuff. But unless you've got some parting words, I guess we'll wrap it up.
I'll tell you what I would say is that I do think if anybody hears this and would take any advice from me, if they're willing, we need to all be engaging our kids. Their screen time is far too much. They are being raised by their devices. And our own adult lives have become so busy that often we see everybody probably not taking enough time. These kids are bright, they're eager, and they're willing. But if we don't take opportunities to engage them in conversation, if we don't as a community have that type of tribal mentality where we're all going to take care of our own, then I worry we're going to lose some potential and some capacity. Our kids are starving for it, but they're not going to come ask you for it. So I would encourage everybody, whether it's you getting involved, at the school level, being a community volunteer, whether it's you going to your neighborhood and just grabbing don't grab the kid, but talking to a child that's in your neighborhood and said, hey, what are your goals for the future? How's school going? Just engage them so that they know people care about me and people have high expectations for me. That's the best thing we can do for our kids right now. And quit thinking that the YouTube and the other people they're seeing on social media are good parents for them. They're not.
I can't think of anything more inspirational than that. So thank you very much.
James, thank you for the time.
And we'll talk again in a year.
Sounds great. Good job with folklore. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. That's it for this episode. Next time, I'm going to be exploring an issue that has something to do with the teachers of our schools, and that's how can you afford to live in Polk County? I'll be talking with a real estate agent about affordable housing. In the meantime, you can reach me with any suggestions for guests or subjects at jamesh@folklore.com. Thanks for listening.